Great games in the evening. This is Jonathan Albin with Nikos RPG, and this is Game Master Soapbox for Monday night, July 14th, 2023. Yeah, so pardon me for a second as I get everything kind of set up here. I gotta get rid of the extra sounds. There we go. Alrighty, so today we're going to be talking about the nesting doll development process, and it's something that I've developed and I've been using for a while, but I hadn't quantified enough to be able to be helpful to other players. And since then, I've succeeded in accomplishing what I wanted to, and that is I've come up with qualified methodology to help you improve your game world and create one within a very short period of time. As a matter of fact, I am endeavoring, on the case of a couple of individuals, to actually create game worlds in 80 sessions or less, which I'm calling a world in around 80 days as a play off of Jules Verne's book. The point here is that we've come up with a mechanism. I've actually devised a mechanism so that if you are a game master and storyteller and want to start immediately, you can, in 1 hour or so session per day, you can be developing your story and be completely accomplished in finishing the game world within 80 days in a virtual week. Of course, every day after that, you'll be doing some creation, but the process will already be established for you, and you'll have a good framework for everything that's going on in your world. So the concept of the nesting doll, as you may or may not know, is a concept that's associated with the Russian, or what is traditionally known as the Russian nesting doll. It's the idea of a small doll that's kind of peanut shaped, and then you build a larger doll and you insert the small one inside of it, and you put the top on it, and then you put that inside of a larger container, and so on and so on and so on. And so you end up with a tall doll that's maybe a foot tall, but it represents like 12 or 14 layers in between, the smallest and the largest. And this concept of the nesting doll development process is that you are going to be able to create an adventure as your brain operates, going from one level or tier to the next and doing the advances necessary to complete the expansion process for each one of them. And I'm going to outline today the steps that it takes to do that. So before that, I want to thank you for joining me today and for giving me a couple minutes of your time. And I want to let you know about a playlist that I put together that is called How to Play Nikos RPG, and that's going to be posted right here. I'm putting my finger up so I'll know where to put the marker. But the idea is that you'll be able to go from here directly to that playlist, and then you can watch through the process and learn how to create a character and play in the Nikos RPG mechanism. Alrighty, so let's get started, shall we? Nesting doll process requires you to choose a medium. And when I say choose a medium here, I'm speaking about what you're going to be using as your tool for world building. As a lifetime Sage member of World Anvil, I heartily recommend it, and that is not without bias because I do own a lifetime membership to it, but it is not a paid relationship in any way. In concerning for why I mentioned it, I mentioned it as a really great system. World Anvil allows you to create virtually prompts and narrative sections for virtually any part of your game at any given point, and therefore it's perfect for this concept of creating the mediums and using them as a form of nesting dolls. So choose the medium that works for you. I highly recommend World Anvil, and if you have any recommendations, I'd ask you to go ahead and post them so that others can find the other sources as well. I am a huge advocate for all game masters having access to any tools and resources they want to use along the way. I do want to also mention that if you have the opportunity to back my Patreon program, you can get access to this show and actually be involved on our broadcast as a guest, and as a Patreon member, you are then a member of the Nikos community and therefore have access to all kinds of resources that aren't available other places. And so one of the services that we're going to be providing is that anyone who backs the Nikos RPG program at the at one of the higher levels will gain access to this nesting doll process to be put together with their game world, so that I can help you develop your game world out the way you would like it to be in as short a period as possible, and teach you the mechanism and how to use it to better your advancing storyline as well. So once you've chosen a medium, once you've decided what mechanical unit or device you're going to use to build, the next thing is to decide where you want to start. And that's choosing one of the nesting doll scales. Now, I'm not going to put a graphic up here at this point in an extended version of this that I'll make for YouTube. I will put the nesting doll tiers, listing them all here, but I'll just go over them verbally really quickly. You have your local area, which will represent a specific location, and 4 or 5 surrounding locations that are nearby enough to interact with during the session. Then you've got the above the area, you have the region, and the region may represent as big a space as a county or a group of communities or whatever. And then above the region, then you have the nation, and nation will represent all of the communities within that recognized governmental region. And then above the nation, you have the continent, and the continent represents the area that that specific kingdom is in, and all environs around it. And then from continent, then you go on to the final level, which is the planet or world. And so by having these graduated scales, you're able to slide up and down effortlessly in determining what part you want to work on at any given point of time. Now, once you've created this, once you've chosen a scale and you've chosen a medium, now let's get down to the creation process. So you're going to want to create basic map details. Now, when I speak of mapping here, I'm not necessarily talking about the actual creation or writing down of the map. What I'm talking about is the ability to create an understanding of what locations are in the area and how relatively close they are to each other in relation to all the other points in that basic map perimeter, so that you have a pretty clear understanding that if you're moving from point A to B and then A to C, then the distance that you need to get to between them, if you're going to pass through the middle one, is from B to A to C. And so you can do the math in your head and therefore calculate, furthermore, what a shortcut might cut off between them, and therefore give you opportunities to navigate fluidly, even if you don't have a written map. One of the biggest challenges to theater of the mind is really a way of establishing for the players a standing point where their feet are on the ground and they understand where they can move and how fast they can convey themselves within the setting. And so by having basic map details hammered out before you even put a pen to a paper, you're able to create an understanding of how these locations are in relation to each other. What if you're using a mapping tool such as WonderDraft or such, you can actually start creating your map. And if you haven't yet, I'm also going to put a marker here that's going to allow you to observe one of the series that I'm doing called Around the World, A World in Around 80 Days. So that way you'll be able to then see this process in action and how it works with a certain game master. And I am using a couple of different individuals to do this. And if you are a viewer and you want to be a part of this, simply subscribe to the channel. And once you're a subscriber, then you can access contact with me, and I will help you through the nesting process simply as part of your subscription to Night Ghost RPG. Now, that's specifically for those who are subscribed to the Twitch channel. If you are a subscriber on YouTube channel, you will have access, but it'll be third party. So in other words, I will be sharing with you information on how to do it much more clearly, because I will be doing some subscriber only videos on YouTube coming up for that. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is, now that you have a basic map details, whether you've sketched them out or if they're just in your head, once you have a real good idea of where they are in relationship to one another, you can actually start to create activity triggers. Now, an activity trigger is something that's a location or an action that occurs in one or more of your map locations that trigger additional activity from the players. It's where the player input has access and purchase on the game environment. Now, once you've done this, I do need to check something real quick here. I had a problem with my page earlier, so I want to make sure that we're getting through on Twitch. Hang on a second. I got to do something real quick here. There we go. Just making sure that we are up and operational. We are. All right. So sorry for that delay. That'll be clipped out, of course, in the YouTube version. But once you have the idea of the activity triggers, I suppose I should have just asked the viewers whether that they could see, and you could put a note into the Discord, into the chat box so I would know. But anyway, once you've created some activity triggers, now it's up to you to realize that the players are going to interact with those. But to do that, you have to have an idea of what they can interact with. So this leads to the development of a list of the cast members that are present. Cast members include a lot of different versions of the non-player character. If you've seen this video, that's maybe the third location right here. In this video right here, you'll be able to get to the idea of the different types of role-play character, non-player characters that would be in your game. This would include your nudes, that is your non-essential window dressing. It will include your RPCs, which are recurring player characters that they run into week over week. There's the SPCs, or story player characters, that they're involved with following the specific campaign arc that they're on. These would be, for example, the people you might meet in an activity trigger or whatever. And once you have an understanding of who all is in the scene and what possible the connections there are, then the players have the opportunity to interact with them and cause and elicit change in the game. Now, once you've done that, as you've got to that point, this is where some of my viewers have kind of balked, and that is, this is where you would encounter your rough encounter story. This is what you're going to be roughing out in the role play that will resolve for the story the direction, the conditions of the activity trigger will take the game. So once you have that concept and you'll be able to get to the rough encounter story, then it's up to the game master to do what he can to orchestrate the movement of that in the direction that he anticipates or expects to go. Not necessarily to guide it or to define it, but rather to oversee the situation and find out how it resolves. Now, in order to do that, you have to introduce the actors. And that is, when I say actors here, now we're not talking only about the player characters, but we're talking about the SPCs and RPCs that may be active in the scene, and therefore the ones that the players will be interacting with. So this may include introducing a nemesis or an antagonist. Maybe it's going to show additional protagonists that are part of the player's cabal, whatever. This idea is that you're going to introduce players to the actors. You're going to get through the rough encounter story, engage to the point where you've got actual responses to the activity triggers. And then once you've done all of that, that's actually concluding the game session. That means then you'll start to prepare for alternatives. What happens if the players do this action, or how do you respond to the effective actions that they took and how it changed your situation? Note that you're preparing for alternatives may mean that you're looking at a slide up or down the scale, or you may be simply changing venue within the same scale. So maybe you start in a small village, you interact a bit, and then you move the party to a secondary location of a city, and now you're operating not with a larger scale because you're still at the local area maps, but you're instead now looking at a different locale, and therefore you have to start considering what follow the same process again. And so now you're once you've decided on your alternatives, then you actually go to the next step, which is choosing whether you want to maintain the medium or switch to a different medium or add additional resources. You'll want to look at the nesting doll scale for the next adventure and so on. So this process will become repetitive in terms of how it works, but it won't limit you or bind you to a specific scale or category. So unlike other advice recommendations that I've seen where they say start with the village and just stay with the village until the party grows out of it or whatever. Instead, just consider that your story may be more dynamic and might move quicker than that and move the players from position to position as the player action deems necessary. But this therefore sets you up for being able to prepare for alternatives such as scale changes and therefore move the story more rapidly as the players demand. So now that we've kind of gone over the nesting doll development process, I want you to understand that I endeavor in all of this to make sure that you as a game master can run the game in whatever mechanic that you're familiar with. I do mention and acknowledge that I'm involved with the Nikos RPG and do recommend it as an alternative to whatever game system you're currently using. But just realize that Nikos RPG is also set up to be a saddle so you can utilize it with any other system that you're using. So for more information, watch, and now this will be the fourth video, which is where I talk about how Nikos can be used as a saddle and how the transition would work. Alrighty, so with all of that, therefore, now that we've established all of that, I want to remind you this is Game Master Soapbox. I do the show every night at 11 p.m. I stay on the air for as long as I have stuff that I need to talk about, and any players that interact with me get their questions answered. So if you are in the viewing audience right now and you want to ask a question, simply put it into the chat box. I'll be glad to respond to it after I close out this official part of the video and we go into the main show. So having said that, I want to thank you for being here, and this has been the Game Masters Soapbox. Every night at 11 p.m. we're here, so come and join us when you can, and thank you for participation in today's show. Alrighty, so we are now no longer in the Game Master Soapbox portion of the show, so let me do this. I want to go ahead and open WonderDraft, the software I've been using. And we can look at possibly creating a new world for anybody that wants to join us, wants to subscribe to the channel, and wants to start working on their game world with me right now. Now, let's just do this. I'm going to open up the Nikos world map. We've got to make some changes to it anyway. So while we're talking about other things, I'm going to work on that a bit. Alrighty, so if you have any questions, feel free to post them into the chat right now. And otherwise, I'm going to put the map up and we can take a look at what Nikos map looks like. So no, it's not let me show it yet. I need to try something else. There it is. Alrighty. So while I'm working on that, if you have any questions or comments, please free to leave them in. What we're building here is the 9th iteration map of Nikos, and I need to make some cosmetic changes if I can. I don't know that I can. Haha. Let's see. Yep, it's going to let me. All right. So this map, as it is, was created with the idea of it being a printed map. And while it is, I would say, kind of a pretty map, it's not as practically useful as it might be if we switched fonts and such. So let me see what I can do with that. That's much more readable. Alrighty, so we'll just change to that font. It happens to match the one we're using for the main Nikos Dark Shards name, so it should be fine. These areas that I'm naming right now are terrain features rather than countries or even mountain ranges. It's just referring to the different locales, and it's written in such a way that without the ridiculous serifs, it'll be easier to read on the screen. Oops. There we go. One more. Alrighty. So feel free if you've got any questions or commentaries to add them in. Otherwise, I'm going to keep fiddling with the map and working on piece by piece. I'll be checking into the chat from moment to moment to see if there's anything I can assist you with. And again, if you want to gain additional access, consider subscribing to the channel and gaining access to actually the nesting doll story developing tool and my my assistance in building your story. But I didn't seem to take, so let me try it. There we go. That'll work. One of the things that I learned a long time ago is if you're drawing something or writing something, you want to use as consistent a font as possible. In other words, don't be changing fonts all the time. Oops. There we go. Makes them stand out a little bit better. Yes, that works considerably better. So endeavor to press on with those. And I'll remain online. If you have any questions or comments or would like to know more, feel free to ask. This portion of the video will stay only on Twitch. I'm not going to subject them to the long form of this, but there may be pieces that will be cut out later for visual use or whatever. But just love to hear from you. Let me know what you're thinking, and if there's any way I can help you to improve your game sessions or answer any questions you might have about games that I run. Alrighty, that looks like. All right. Concordia. No, that doesn't work. That fits the map a little bit better anyway. Alrighty. Why is it doing that? There we go. Uh, there we go. Alrighty. Alrighty, well, I'm going to continue working on this, but there's no point in having to drag out you watching unless you have something else I can help you with. I want to thank you for your time watching tonight's stream, and if you can, maybe make sure you catch me every night at 11 p.m., where I do another episode of Game Master Soapbox. This is Jonathan Albin, like I've RPG. See you next time.